MENACE is one of the most anticipated turn-based tactics games of 2026, and for good reason. It's being developed by a veteran studio with another classic tactics game under their belt, and even though it's sci-fi, it's not trying to be another modern XCOM clone. Whether you've been following MENACE closely or you're just hearing about it, this video breaks down everything you need to know before launch, from release plans and mod support to the core gameplay systems and what to expect from the campaign. I'll be covering MENACE heavily throughout development, alongside other turn-based strategy games, so if that's your thing, feel free to subscribe. Let's get started. First things first, MENACE is a single-player only game. There are no online features, co-op, or multiplayer modes currently planned. It is designed to be fully playable offline, with the entire experience built around a solo campaign. At launch, MENACE is coming to PC, and right now, other platforms like consoles, GOG, or Steam Deck support have not been announced. According to the developers, that's something the publisher, Hooded Horse, will handle down the line. So for now, it's best to assume that this game will be PC only. That being said, MENACE is launching on February 5th, 2026 into early access, and this part is really important. This will not be one of those early access games where the content is basically finished and they're just working on polish or balancing. The developers have stated that entire systems may be added or changed during the early access period, which means features will evolve, mechanics may change, and some things simply won't be there on day one. So if you're choosing to jump in at launch, this will be a game that's actively being built while receiving feedback. And we currently don't know how long the early access period is expected to be. But the real question is, what kind of experience is MENACE actually trying to create? To answer that, I'm going to break down some of the key design choices and core systems you'll be dealing with, starting with the campaign. Players will take on the role of a Marine commander in charge of a battle cruiser called the TCRN Impetus, which houses all the squad leaders and Marines under your command. You've been deployed to an isolated star system known as the Wayback to bring order and crack down on the rogue factions operating there. However, once you arrive, an as of now unknown event occurs, damaging your cruiser and leaving you effectively cut off from any reinforcements. On top of the space pirates and rogue military operations in the Wayback, you also discover an alien presence creeping across the galaxy. Stranded with no backup, you're forced to adapt, depending on the mercenaries and factions within the system, even using their tech and recruiting from their ranks to keep the alien menace at bay. A full campaign playthrough is designed to be 30 plus hours, with a defined ending point and story, meaning this is not a sandbox and it's not endless. If you fail to stop the menace from spreading, you will lose the campaign. Game over. But this doesn't mean that every playthrough will be the same. Far from it, actually. The story will only have a few predetermined events and points, similar to XCOM 2, but the rest will be procedurally generated and leave a lot of choice to the player. I'll talk more about that later when I get into the strategy layer and structure of the operations. First, let's cover the tactical side and mission-to-mission combat systems. MENACE is built around squad-based strategy with a combined arms approach, meaning infantry and vehicles will be fighting together on the battlefield. Combat runs on a flexible action point system where most units will have a base pool of 100 action points. You can move, attack, take cover, and use abilities in pretty much any order you want, as long as you have the points available to do it. Units are not locked into the often copied modern XCOM style of move then shoot, with another important distinction being that there are no Overwatch mechanics in MENACE either, as the devs felt that it slows the game down a bit too much. Instead, you can attack multiple times in a single turn, reposition, or react, as long as you stay within that action point budget. And we're not talking about small scale skirmishes either. You'll be fighting and using tanks, mechs, armored personnel carriers, and other vehicles right alongside your infantry forces. So does that mean that MENACE is a grand strategy total war style of game? Not at all. The focus is still on building smaller squads. To make this interesting, MENACE uses a tabletop style supply point system for equipping and deploying your units. Instead of fixed squad sizes, you're given a pool of points that you can spend however you want. Better weapons, heavier armor, combat accessories, and the freedom to add or remove squaddies from each group. This way, you can deploy a smaller, decked out, heavily armed strike team or a large group of cannon fodder squads with basic weapons and armor to overwhelm the enemy, and anything in between. Available supply points will fluctuate based on cruiser upgrades, mission rewards or scenarios, and other in-game events, but this system gives you a lot of freedom in your approach. However, it also means that every deployment has a trade-off, which begs the question, when it comes to squad building, do you prefer a few elite, heavily geared units or a larger squad with lighter equipment? Let me know in the comments. Speaking of cruiser upgrades, in between missions, this will be your strategic hub, where you'll upgrade and customize your support options and modules. Different factions have different technology and modules available, and your trust level with those factions will determine what you can use. Examples of off-map abilities include airstrikes, ammo and supply drops, strafing runs, and medevacs, making your choices here a core part of how you prepare for and survive operations. But while abilities and airstrikes are always fun, as players, we know that our soldiers and characters are what we really get attached to in these games. So does Menace take the XCOM approach of player-made soldiers and customization? Well, yes and no. Let me explain. Squad leaders are the heart and soul of the experience here. At the early access launch, it's currently planned to have 16 available, with 26 total in the full game, but the developers have said they may add more if time allows and development goes well. These are your main characters, and every squad leader is fully voiced, written, and designed with their own background story and relationships. In addition, squad leaders that are lost will have permadeath consequences. But here's the kicker. Because these leaders are fully voiced and designed to interact with each other, they are not customizable in name or appearance, and the developers have not backed down on this at all. Squad leaders are deliberately written with specific story arcs and backgrounds for players to uncover, and it's meant to be part of the replayability. Choosing different characters will create a different experience. But hold on, not all is lost if you're wanting some customization. While the leaders of your squads are fixed, the members of those squads, or squaddies, are semi-customizable. You see here that you can change names and call signs alongside adding squaddies to different detachments, as well as a stat tracking how many missions they've survived. The demo currently doesn't allow for gender, appearance, or home planet changes, but there were some hints that may come later. Squaddies actually represent HP for a unit, so each one you add, for a maximum of 8, will increase the health pool and firepower of a squad. However, you can't directly control any one squaddie, only the leaders, and when they die, there's a chance that they will be gone permanently as well. The one exception to all of this are pilots, squad leaders that can only deploy with vehicles or mechs and won't have any infantry under their command. This system is probably the most polarizing in the game, so let me know. Do you prefer fully customized soldiers and leaders, or written characters with interactions and story? Does the squaddie system do enough to bridge the gap between the two? It's worth noting that one highly requested feature, mod and Steam Workshop support, has already been confirmed by the developers, although it most likely won't be there at launch. This means the community could eventually add their own leaders and tweaks to the squaddie system, satisfying both sides of this debate and extending the replayability far beyond the base game. And speaking of the bigger picture, up to this point, everything we've talked about affects how you play a single mission, but outside of those small victories, what kind of commander will you be over the long term? That's where the strategy layer comes in. Everything on this side of the game revolves around your battle cruiser and how you choose to handle the way back. You'll decide which factions to work with, which operations to commit to, and how much risk you're willing to take. Notice that I said operations instead of isolated missions, because that's what Menace is built around. An operation typically consists of 3 to 5 missions that are linked together, with a progressive path structure like you see here that allows you to choose which ones to take on from a randomly generated pool. Once you begin an operation, you're locked in until it's resolved, success or failure. And here's the important part. Failing any single mission will fail the entire operation. There's no brushing it off and moving on. The board doesn't reset between missions. Injuries, casualties, damaged vehicles, and depleted resources all persist through any single operation. So if you limp through one mission and barely hold it together, the next one becomes that much harder. This structure creates a very different kind of pressure compared to most tactics games. It forces you to think ahead. You're not just asking, how can I win this mission? You're asking, what can I do to survive the next 3? Sometimes the smartest move is to cut losses, play defensively, or avoid unnecessary risks. And because squad leaders can die permanently, every decision carries that much more long-term weight. I know this all sounds brutal, but failure is not the end. You still keep any rewards earned from successful missions. Failure is just a setback and learning process before tackling the next operation. operation. Layered on top of all of that is MENACE's faction system. Multiple factions operate within the Wayback, each offering different technologies, modules, and strategic benefits. Your relationship with them is tracked through a reputation and trust score. Gain trust with a faction, and you'll unlock access to their equipment and support options. Lose that trust, however, and you can actively lose access to tech that you were previously able to use. That means your choices don't always unlock things. They can actually take options away from you if those relationships go bad. Factions will also offer missions, and while the full extent of these mechanics and number of factions hasn't been revealed, I have a strong feeling that you'll probably not be able to please everyone. Tying all of this together is that strategic hub of the cruiser we talked about, what support options you choose, who you ally with, and rewarding how you prepare for the long game. Now, as far as the path you take to get there, while the campaign has a few specific points, everything else is highly variable. Operations, maps, planetary conditions, and even weather are procedurally generated. Night missions reduce visibility, environmental impacts like cold weather will stop lasers from overheating, and equipment choices will be crucial to determine how you approach these ever-changing situations. You'll be making different choices, playing in different conditions, and running different operations each time. But this variability isn't the only source of replay value. Combined with permanent loss, limited resources, and operations that don't reset between missions, the strategy layer becomes the main source of tension, setting the stakes for your game. You're not meant to play perfectly. You're meant to adapt, survive, and make the best choices you can with the information available. Ultimately, this is where I feel MENACE will define itself. Not through endless content, but through different outcomes, long-term consequences, and the constant weight of decisions that can actually shape the rest of your campaign. I am extremely excited about this game, and if you are too, there's a demo on Steam you can check out to kind of give you an early feel. I also have a series of videos where I play through an operation on expert difficulty, and if you want to check that out, you can click through to it with the video on screen now.